Hello and welcome to today's conversation, Talent in Motion. My name is Whitney Ennis. I'm the president of Ocean here at Trailer Bridge. And today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Jasmine James, our senior talent acquisition specialist, and our vice president of employee services, Casey Swanson. Thanks for being here today, guys.
Thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Yep. We have an exciting conversation planned. These two are responsible for all things related to our employees. And so we really want to dive into what today's workforce looks like, provide candidates with some advice on how they can stand out in the market. But before we get started, they are the experts. So Casey, could you just explain to our audience a little bit about the role the two of you hold here at Trailer Bridge?
Absolutely. So our team is employee services. So that's essentially internally what we call HR here at Trailer Bridge. So we are over benefits, recruiting, HR, payroll, some learning and development. So a little bit of everything here at Trailer Bridge.
Perfect. Well, today's conversation is going to cover all of those topics. We're going to talk about today's workforce, as well as the future of work and what employees and candidates expect, and offer some advice for candidates out there looking to stand out in the marketplace. But let's get started talking about today's workforce. What we're currently seeing is the desire for flexibility and purpose, growth, and really a strong culture within a workplace. Employees seem to want that. That's what we read about in articles, but I'd love to know from your perspective, what are you actually seeing from candidates and from your employees? And what are they asking about the most when they come in for a job interview? So Casey, could we start with you?
Yeah, of course. I think it's not a one size fits all. Benefits matter, compensation, flexibility, culture, growth opportunities. So I think what matters most is very much an individual specific item, and it really changes with life chapters that you're in. Like I have friends with small children who value flexibility over everything right now because it allows them to be the parent they want to be. So I think it kind of ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we have candidates, and a lot of the times, they want you to paint a picture for them. They want to understand how they could fit into your organization. They really want to know like what the day to day is like, what the culture is like, what does growth look like for them, what type of environment would they be stepping into. So they're really looking to figure out what how the organization can also serve them.
I think it's one of the things that we see from a marketing or a communication specialist position is that employees are looking to our social channels to say what's happening inside the organization. It came up with one of our onboarding candidates was talking about, I saw on Instagram the type of things that are happening and it made me feel like I could be there. And so I know we try to work with both of you and with your team to showcase employees, to showcase what work looks like here at Trailer Bridge. But that's something that employers should keep in mind, that we want to give them that visibility inside the building, inside the activities of what's happening, so that they can see themselves there. Right. And I think to your point, Casey, I really valued flexibility based on where I was. That chapter is coming to an end as my kids get older, but it's important to understand that based on life phases for our employees. We recently read, and we were kind of talking about in preparation for this call, a Fast Company article that was highlighting wildflowering from a career perspective, and this idea that you could expose yourself to different parts of the organization to get different experiences and to kind of see what it's like over on this side, whereas maybe historically you kind of felt like there was like a one singular path for your career. How is that changing what a successful career looks like for an individual? This new concept, I know we've heard it as a jungle gym before. And what makes you want, what does that look like? And then what makes you want to present a candidate who maybe hasn't had that traditional path? So if we start first with, how is success in a career changing, and what can that look like?
Yeah, I think it's not that traditional corporate ladder that we've always kind of referred to it as. Growth is more than titles and promotions. It can be exposure to another department within the organization. It can be a specific conference. It can be, owning a certain project. I think the focus should be on what skills are strongest in that individual. Like we've had a couple account managers over the years who have been really strong in digging into the details and using their relationships to resolve outstanding invoices or issues. And, that instead of the manager asking, okay, where's your next step in the account management team, they ended up transferring to a collections, cash management, AR sort of role where, their strengths had a bigger impact for the business. So it's kind of broader, I think.
Yes.
I agree. I think candidates, they have to remain open to what growth may look like. It may not always be, vertical. It may not always be a leadership position. It may be, more targeted towards what skills can I gain in this department? What can I learn to truly become an asset to the business? Just kind of opening up, broadening your horizons. Don't put yourself in a box.
Sure.
Yeah.
The example that you provided, Casey, I think that points to the power and the benefit of having someone who understands different parts of the business, taking that knowledge with them and applying it, not only their own skill set, but just the organizational knowledge to be able to look at a different function, but with that kind of background and historical relevance to what they're doing in a new role. Seems like that can be very helpful.
Well, and sometimes the path isn't always visible, right? I mean, I think sometimes it's visible to the manager and they need to kind of, communicate that to the employee, or sometimes it doesn't exist. And it's, a combination of the employee kind of expressing interest, the manager making a case for them and going to bat, leadership being willing to take a risk. And so, it's kind of a team effort.
So I take it you have a lot of conversations with individuals and with managers to kind of help facilitate that type of growth and help them see people in different places based on what you know of the employee.
Yes, and I mean that's something that I love about TrailerBridge is there's a lot of positions that we have currently with successful people in them that didn't exist 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. And, of course, depending on the size of the business, it's not always possible, but a lot of times you can kind of work together and create something new and different that really satisfies the employee and has a serious impact and value add to the business.
Right.
And that's really when we think about today's workforce, that's some of the topics that we're seeing. But an important part of organization is attracting and recruiting talent and the right talent that not only for the positions that you need today, but looking at somebody's skill set and making sure that you're positioning the organization well for the future. Recruiting someone is one thing, and Jasmine, we know that you are an expert at this, but giving them reasons to stay within an organization is a part of that process. What do you believe employees need from an organization to feel like they can build a career here, or with whatever organization? We say here, but
Yeah.
what organization? Whatever.
Yeah, I think, that starts with the first conversation that you're having with the candidate when screening them. It's really just kind of learning about what's important to them. Like, what has you looking to leave your current organization? What has you, open to other opportunities? And then also just, kind of telling them what we could or may not be able to provide them. So we, or just making sure that we're working together with that. But I feel like, it's just really having those honest conversations and, setting the expectation early on.
Yeah.
We recently started doing stay interviews this year because we were doing 90-day check-ins for new employees, exit interviews for employees that were leaving, and obviously that left a lot in between that we were not capturing. And so, finding out in an exit interview that you felt stagnant for a year is a little too late. And so we're trying to be more timely and have more touch points where we can, engage real time and find out how we can help and what people are looking for and how to support prior to an exit.
And I think sometimes it can feel a little daunting to say the thing that you want. That's where trusting your HR team, trust your employee services team, that they are there to help you find the right spot. And Jasmine, I know that you've had conversations with people for a position, and sometimes the right answer to them is this may not be the right one for you based on what we've talked about. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once having those conversations, finding out what's important to them, if you're saying, hey, I want to be, in leadership in the next 2 years, well, I can't guarantee that that's going to happen in, certain departments that we hire for. Growth may be, it just may look a little different. We are a smaller organization. And, I think a lot of the times growth can look like going to other, departments or just, upskilling, different things like that. So I think that's what it kind of comes down to. So,
Yeah. How important, Casey, are managers in this process and or leaders? We can call it a lot of different things. When it comes to creating an environment where employees can thrive And what does that look like in practice?
I think they're instrumental. I mean, HR can roll out programs and initiatives all day long, but managers are really the ones that are working side by side with employees that know the ins and outs, the strengths and weaknesses, and so they're going to kind of hand deliver that culture to employees directly. And so I think that's huge. I was thinking about Whitney shared this celebration survey article a while back, and the woman had this line about you're giving Starbucks gift cards to employees that don't even drink coffee. And so I think really knowing your people, which the managers are going to have that, direct line to employees, can really, add a lot of value. Like you really know your people, create a celebration survey if you need to kind of dig into those wants so you can really recognize them and engage them in a way that's most impactful to them too.
Yeah, as we were talking about before we came on, I don't drink coffee. So
Right.
Starbucks coffee, a gift
Mhm.
card would fall very flat. But if you
Right.
brought me a Chick-fil-A sweet tea, we would be in business. So
Exactly.
that's important. And I think as a manager, it's important to really lean in and have honest conversations and get to know your employees. Everything doesn't have to feel like so stuffy. I mean, there certainly are lines that need to be kind of drawn so that people understand, but it's important to have personal relationships. And
Mhm.
that's what we do here at Trailer Bridge. We're really focused on that. Casey, you're involved in the leadership development training that we hold here at Trailer Bridge alongside Mitch and myself. And that's really where we're in developing some of those leadership qualities, some of that
Mhm.
training around how to really be a leader that knows our culture, but also can be there for their employees. Do you want to share a little bit about that process?
Um, yeah, it's a great program, and there's a lot of content to it. But I think we circle back a lot on authenticity, communication, transparency, because I think you have to have those elements to know your people, to connect with them, for them to feel comfortable coming to you with a concern, with a need, with something they want to lean into. And so, and I think that's kind of a common thread in a lot of what we're talking about is that transparency with candidates, for managers, both ways.
And that's really about today's conversation is we want to be transparent not only internally, but we want to share the knowledge that we have with the industry because
Mhm.
the industry is a tight-knit community. And here in Jacksonville, a lot of people know each other and we support each other and watching businesses grow and watching businesses succeed. And so that's the piece that we want to share this knowledge with our audience. Before we move on to the section where we're going to talk about the future of workforce, because it is changing, the way we do business is changing, I want to remind our audience that you can submit a question for Jasmine or Casey. We'll get to those at the end of today's conversation. And if we don't, we'll make sure that we answer it in some form of social content or on our blog. The future of work looks a lot different. I know whenever I started work, it was one thing. We have new technology. We went through a period of time where remote work became the thing. Then it was like hybrid, back in office. Are employers beginning to place more value on adaptability, transferable skills versus having that perfect resume? Because I know when you came out of college a long time ago, when I came out of college, it was all about making sure your resume was intact.
Mhm.
What does that look like today?
Absolutely. I think that, of course, technical skills still very much matter, especially, for specific positions. But I think that we are placing a lot more value on, those transferable skills. And with our company, I mean, we hire a lot of people who don't have direct industry experience. So we do have to look and kind of dig in and find out what they've done in their, past work history, what they've learned, and how can they bring that into our organization? How can they adapt? So I think that's important that we look at, both.
Yeah, I think a resume, is obviously a snapshot of what you've done. I think there's ways you can dig into how the work gets done. I kind of like to go back further and see, I love seeing Chick-fil-A on a resume because even if it's, has nothing to do with the role I'm looking for and it was 10 years ago, but to me, that paints a picture of how you're going to service clients and how you're going to show up at work. And there's a lot of examples like that for me, like college athletes, military, bartenders. I look for some of those things way further back than you would maybe be looking, because to me that tells me more about how you're going to show up, because you can teach transportation and logistics, you can teach industry stuff, but it's a lot harder to teach some of those soft skills.
Yeah, I mean, your resume tells a story, whether people realize it or not. And I think that people underestimate what they've learned in those, experiences or previous positions, because it isn't the exact experience that we're hiring for. But, I encourage people to, really learn what it is that they've learned and learn how to talk about themselves, to employers. So
Yeah, we sometimes we don't want to brag on ourselves, and
I know.
because it feels a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, we are our best advocate. When you mentioned bartender, Casey, I was just thinking about a previous employee in our logistics division who just kind of shot up the ranks, but was a bartender, I think, at Chili's, but had that ability to the people skills, the ability to like work on different things and kind of balance a lot of at one time, and just seeing his success. And knowing that that's where it kind of started, and that's just one example across the board. We say resume, and I think a lot of times we think about that as that one-page thing you drop off at a organization. But from your perspective, is LinkedIn replacing that, or should people still have that resume that we're sending in?
I'm a huge advocate of LinkedIn. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you need both, but
Yeah.
I think it is coming away a little bit from just the resume. I think LinkedIn is so important.
It is. I think LinkedIn is your online resume. So that way, even if you're not actively applying for a job, you have a profile on here that anybody can, any employer can find you, even if you're not looking. So I think that LinkedIn is super important, but also having a resume prepared is just as important too.
Well, you do a lot of scouting for employees before they ever actually apply for the job. And so I take it you are perusing LinkedIn quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All
And
the time.
what helps somebody stand out on their LinkedIn profile? If you were looking at it from that perspective, what would you tell somebody?
I would say, definitely a professional, photo, of course, but your bio, I look at your work history, what skills you have listed. And like I said, it's similar to your resume. It's going to tell a story, it's going to tell, and then you can also kind of verify a lot with, previous employers based off of maybe what they're connected to. People that, what are they have like this section where, previous employers can make comments and things like that. So it kind of speaks to a little bit of like your character and maybe your work ethic and things like that. So I think that it's absolutely a must in today's workforce to have a LinkedIn profile, and one that checks all the boxes.
Now, I have another question. The cover letter. Is that still a thing? Is the cover letter, does it hold as much power as I think it once did? Because that used to be someone's way to like speak to beyond the resume, give more personality.
I don't think that you can go wrong with the cover letter, but I think that it's important to have a cover letter if your experience, let's say if your resume is not reading for the position that you're applying for. I enjoy reading those cover letters to see like, okay, when they can explain what their experience is, what they think that they could bring to the organization. To me, that's taking that extra step. And that's what gets your application pulled. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to have a conversation because, their experience may not be exactly what I'm looking for, but at least, I have this right here that I can read and look into. And now I'm interested.
I 100% agree. I think sometimes it gets glossed over, frankly, I think. But a lot of sometimes people think that they need a different version of their resume for every position so they can kind of tailor it to that position. I think the cover letter is an easy way to have your one standard resume, and then you can speak more specifically to the role in a cover letter. So it can be a little easier to kind of differentiate yourself with that.
Very true.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Now, here at Trailer Bridge, as part of the process of applying, we do some behavioral analysis. And how does that help the two of you really look at someone's skills, their personality, and how that may match up with what the role is looking for? Casey, I know you work very closely with managers to help identify that, what the benchmark is, and then use that as an analysis, because it's important that we're the right position for the employee as much as the employee is the right, for the position.
Right.
Yeah, we use predictive index, but if a company can use some sort of similar like behavioral tool, there's a lot of value in it. But essentially it's measuring natural behaviors in someone and comparing that to what the position would require. And so it kind of helps. It doesn't mean that someone who doesn't fall within those parameters couldn't do the job. It just means that they would have to push themselves more out of what naturally they're inclined to do in order to be successful in the role. And as we know, burnout is, constantly talked about, and typically those people are going to fall into that quicker than those that are naturally inclined to be successful in what that role requires. And so it really helps us, I think, place people and set them up for success in something that's really going to be naturally complementary to them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one thing to have a conversations and, the candidates can tell you what they're interested in, but, let's say if your resume may read one way, conversations going good, we can review the predictive index to kind of see like, okay, this person may actually have this, maybe more comfortable in this type of position, working at this pace, with this type of work style. But it's not something that we solely, rely on, but it is a very helpful tool to kind of help, figure out where to place candidates.
I always enjoy watching people read their report
Yeah.
of like what the analysis is based on, because you're just answering questions and words really, and then you read it and you're like, wow, that's so me.
Right.
I feel so seen, or that's a little
Yeah.
scary.
Right.
Because that's part of our leadership training, is allowing people to see their own profile, but also the profiles of those people on their team. And it's like, oh yeah, that person is right on the mark. And so it's interesting how that works and gives so much insight into an individual. So you guys are working with candidates day in and day out. You're working with employees. So I want to kind of close out our conversation today to really offer your sound advice for candidates who are looking to find their right position within the workforce, whether that be within a role within Trailer Bridge or a role in another organization. So when you're reviewing candidates, what makes someone stand out beyond simply having the right experience on the resume or a really great cover letter? We'll start with that.
I would say you got to look behind, beyond the title. You have to look beyond the title, and you have to have the conversation. Once talking to candidates, you figure out like, hey, are they going to connect the dots themselves on how they would be an asset, or align well with the position that we're hiring for. I think that's what makes somebody stand out. If, let's say, your resume doesn't read exactly what I'm looking for, but if you've already went through the job description, you've done the research on the company, you're able to explain to me like, I don't have this experience, but I work really well in fast-paced environments. I love multitasking. Then okay, you sound like you might be a good account manager, even though you don't have direct account manager experience. So it's really just being able to identify, and I would suggest, candidate, just learn your skills and learn how to talk about yourself. Like you said, we don't like to brag on ourselves, but I think that we should, that we should make that the norm. We should get comfortable speaking on what it is that we do, even if it's not exactly what what you're applying for and what you're looking for. So,
you said look beyond the title. I think company size can be a big differentiator. A controller at a company that is 100 people versus 800 people, the position is going to look really different. So I'm always interested in company size, because I think that, paints a bigger picture too. But yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Because responsibilities can look different based off of the company size, and the titles don't always mean the same thing. So
Titles are different across the board.
they are.
Yeah.
And the responsibility that carries with the title is different across an organizational based on size. So what's one piece of advice that you would give someone trying to find their next job? Not only trying to find their next job, but really trying to find an organization that they can truly grow and thrive. You mentioned company size, so that's part of it, but beyond that.
I would say, the interview should be a two-way street. Don't trust that the company has a good culture if they've won an award for it, but verify, ask why the position is open, what leadership styles are like, what growth looks like. You should be interviewing them almost as much as they're interviewing you to make sure that it's a fit for everyone. And I don't know, some people I think maybe are nervous to ask questions, but I think it's a green flag when you're asking me questions. You should have questions for me in an interview. So ask the questions.
I would say I agree with you, Casey, with that. And then I think that growth looks different for everybody. And I think that remaining open to opportunities that may not, align with what you were initially looking for can still get you to the place that you're looking to go. We've had several people that we've brought on that have wanted to be in different departments, but we didn't have an opening. And we put them somewhere else, and they've eventually been able to cross over into that department. And so I think that just remaining open and looking at the bigger picture, what you can learn along the way.
Being patient.
Being patient, being patient.
Not my
And
strong.
open-minded.
not
It
my
might look
strongest
different.
suit.
Open-minded,
Yeah,
yes.
it might look different, but
Yes.
you can still get there.
Well, I have about 1 to 2 more questions for you ladies. I just want to remind our audience, if you do have a question, please feel free to ask it. We would love to connect with you and get you the answers that you're looking for. We talk about what employees can do to find the right employer where they can grow and thrive. Can you talk about things that they can do beyond to get connected into an industry? I know I'm very involved in the Propeller Club here in Jacksonville. It was very instrumental in helping me grow my network. What are what's something that you would recommend for someone who's looking to kind of dig in a little bit deeper and build something?
I would say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, go to events where the people that, that you're looking to join, the organization or the industry that you're looking to be in, go where they are, introduce yourself, have conversations, just build relationships. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think a majority of people would probably say that networking is not their favorite thing, myself included. But I think sometimes, the pros that come out of it outweigh the cons and the discomfort. And so, forcing yourself to get out there and connect with people. And, depending on what you're wanting. So for TNL industry, there's Transportation Club of Jacksonville, there's Propeller Club, but also to not, pigeonhole yourself too much because there's a lot of industry connections outside of those specific groups. Like we were just at the UNF Employer Summit. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago? And it was phenomenal. There was over 200 employers there, tons of industry employers there. And, it was really good networking and learned a lot. And so, kind of branching out into stuff that might not naturally come to mind when you're thinking a specific industry.
Good advice. It is definitely hard to network, especially when you don't know anybody in the room.
Yeah,
it's easy for you. Though,
that's when I just go with you and then
Right.
you introduce me.
That's why I love the Propeller Club.
Yes.
I feel like I have so many friendly faces. It's easy to walk into a room when you
Yes.
have friendly faces, but it's also good. Casey, when I've gone to SHRM meetings with you, I feel like I'm attached to your hip
Yes,
because
that is my
that
equivalent.
is your version of the Propeller Club. And
Yes.
so maybe that's a piece of advice is find a friend and
Yes.
make a friend and
Mhm.
ask someone to make those introductions for you.
Yes.
There's no harm in that. And I think a lot of people in our industry, and I think people in general, want to help others. And so looking for, okay, this person has a connection there. Hey, could you introduce me? Or what opportunities do you see? I know I just had a friend who reached out and I connected her with you, Jasmine. She was looking for some opportunities. So don't be afraid to kind of ask for that introduction. So just a few more minutes for audience. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in. I do have one last that I think is really important. And because a lot of times we put a lot of responsibility on the employer to create an environment, to have the culture, to do the things, to offer the compensation. But Casey, my question for you is this: where does the employer's responsibility end and the employee responsibility begin when it comes to building a successful career?
I think it's a partnership. I think, it's hard for one to happen without the other. I think for the employer, there needs to be opportunities there that are visible, that are communicated. There needs to be feedback. And then the employee has to raise their hand, speak up, and walk through that door. Like the employer can open the door, but you then as the employee have to walk through it and take the project or take on the task that might seem a little different, but could still get you to where you want to go. Being open-minded. But I think it takes both in a partnership for that success on both sides, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, make yourself stand out too. I mean, like you said, like speaking up and letting your employer know what you're looking for, but then also researching ways that you can, stand out and, or fix a process or whatever it may be. It goes both ways.
Because sometimes people aren't aware that there's a need, right?
Mhm.
And as much as you can be plugged in with your manager or plugged in with your leader, sometimes, you're not aware. And so don't be afraid to say, hey, this is happening, or I'd really love this over here. I haven't talked about it before. And having those natural conversations, because if not, everybody gets frustrated because you're upset that you feel like someone's not seeing you, and they're upset because they feel like you're getting frustrated. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have one question. Being a fast-growing private company, do you have any employee resource groups, or what type of resources are you offering to employees?
We have TB Well, which is our wellness committee internally. We have TB Gives, which focuses on community service and giving back, volunteer opportunities. Those are our two main ones. Based on our size, I know there's some bigger companies that have really well-developed employer resources groups or ERGs. But, we're always open to hearing what people are interested in, but those are kind of our two big ones and our most, well-defined ones.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Casey, Jasmine, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I think there's always a lot to talk about when it comes to our employees, creating a workplace that make people want to succeed and supports people's success. I'm sure we'll do this again
I'd love
because
to.
things constantly change.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have a lot more expertise beyond what we just talked about today.
Thanks.
If you're interested in a position at Trailer Bridge or understanding what a career could look like for you here at Trailer Bridge or within the transportation logistics industry, please feel free to connect with both of them on LinkedIn. You can also look to our website, our blog, where we'll be highlighting some different resources for you. All of our careers are available at trailerbridge.com/careers. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to chatting again.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.